Good afternoon. I'm George Latimer, Westchester County Executive. Welcome to our weekly Westchester update. This is Monday, March 28th. We're going to cover a couple of important topics we hope will be interesting to you. We have with us today Mayor Mary Marvin of the Village of Bronxville, who is our guest this week as part of our Municipal Partners program. She will talk about the Village of Bronxville, which she has led for quite a number of years, and also some of the other policy issues that she's interested in covering. We're very happy to have Mary with us today. We're going to talk right at the outset about the county center and where we are in its present and future iterations. Ken Jenkins, Deputy County Executive, will be joining me. Thereafter, we'll go over all of the COVID information we have, and then we're going to talk about the issues revolving the Lake Isle Dam, which is on the Eastchester-New Rochelle border, sits just to the west of the Hutchinson River Parkway, and where we are in looking at that matter and how we intend to be part of a resolution of the concerns that exist. Let me begin first with an update on Westchester County Center. In a few seconds, we're going to talk about our COVID vaccination and infection numbers, and the County Center has been a staple for us to use as both a vaccination and a testing center. The County Center, we almost have forgotten, was a venue for all other kinds of activities, for exhibits and special events. We have had high school and college graduations there, certainly basketball programs, both high school and professional level of basketball in Westchester Knicks and at one point the New York Liberty. And we have used it really with great success as a vaccination center. During the highlight in the first few months of 2021, when the vaccinations were first available, the county center was one of a handful of statewide locations that people could come regionally, and we were able to vaccinate quite a lot of people there. We'll give some statistics a little later on. But we've reached the point at which we're going to suspend our vaccination and testing operations there as of this Friday, April 1st. That will be the last time we use that for vaccination purposes or testing purposes. Anyone who received a first dose, either this week or at any point in time through the end of this week, will be contacted by the Westchester County Department of Health to receive their second dose at our White Plains Health Clinic. That's a county facility. It's at 134 Court Street between Quaropus and the Post Road, just about 2 blocks here from the county office building. And that location will be the one where second doses will be administered to complement the first doses that you may have received at the county center. Starting April 8th, COVID vaccines will be offered at that location on Fridays from 9 a.m. to 3 p.m. And this is the routine immunization day for our health department. And when COVID began originally, you may recall, we started out with our 2 health clinics in White Plains and Yonkers providing a basic service. When we reached the point of vaccination where we had to vaccinate, as we successfully have, hundreds of thousands of Westchester residents, clearly our 2 clinics were not sufficient for that purpose. That is why we moved to the county center. Now the demand for vaccinations has dropped dramatically, primarily because we have such a high percentage of our population that's been vaccinated. So we are going to move out of the county center for that purpose, again, as of the end of the week. We are in dialogue with the state of New York, which originally took over the county center for the vaccination purposes in 2021, and there is now a restoration project that will have to be underway. That will take multiple months to deconstruct that which is constructed inside the county center. You may remember that outside the county center in the parking lot, there was a tented area that was up for quite a number of months. In there were certain units, hospital bays that were going to be used as backup hospitals, accommodations if they were required. We never did reach the point of the infection here in Westchester County or New York State where we ran out of available beds. So that original use of the county center, both outside and inside, was not required. But we then did use it and then for vaccinations again and for testing. But the outside facility had been deconstructed a couple of months ago. However, that area needs to be returned to its prior use as a parking lot. And for those who know, and I'm sure there's plenty that do, we had a series of trees that were planted around the perimeter of that lot that were dedicated on behalf of World War I veterans, and we need to reestablish that grove once again. That'll take some time to do, and then what we have to do inside the county center in order to make it usable for various bookings that might yet occur. We haven't determined how long it'll take for that reconstruction process to happen. It is a negotiation with the state because the state made the original commitment to reestablish the county center back to its prior iteration. And the hope is all of that will happen in a reasonable time frame. But even if we go off the vaccination protocol at the county center, it will be months before we see the county center back to its prior usage. And I would also say that there will be a dialogue in county government about the long-term use of the county center, because whatever we do to reestablish it will be to bring it back to the level that was operational as of February 2020 when we shut it down. There's a much larger need to redefine what's going to happen to the future of that facility. And 40 some odd years ago, my predecessor, County Executive Andy O'Rourke, undertook a major reconstruction of the county center. That was the first time it had been done in 50 years, since it was built in the early 1930s. So we're going to look at what the implications would be of a much larger modernization of the facility. But we want to bring it back to usability. That process will begin as soon as we shut it down as a vaccination center. So I repeat, if you've had your first dose at the county center, you will be able to get your second dose at our White Plains Health Clinic at 134 Court Street. You can contact the county health department. There'll be a number scroll across the screen at some point in time. Jot it down if you fall into that category of individuals. And we hope this is a sign that the COVID infections are now starting to lessen sufficient enough for us to be more normal, return to normalcy to the greatest extent possible. We'll talk more about COVID in just a second, but now I'd like to bring on our guest for this week, Mayor Mary Marvin of Bronxville. I had the pleasure of representing Bronxville in the state Senate before I moved to this position, so Mary and I have had the opportunity for the better part of a decade to work together. Bronxville, of course, is one of our notable communities. It has a cachet wherever you travel, and you reference Bronxville. Many, many prominent Americans do or have lived in the village, and it has striking architecture. It's got a great downtown village, very strong business district, very good chamber of commerce that works with that business district, and the mayor's going to touch on that and a few other things. So without any further ado, Mayor Mary Marvin, Village of Bronxville. Madam Mayor, thank you for joining us today.
Thank you, County Executive. It's been a pleasure of a great partnership you and I have had for, I've been mayor 17 years, so it's probably as long. But just want to mention the most important thing for every community is, please, coming out of COVID, shop local. Our folks need us to keep our villages, our towns, our cities vibrant. Don't think for a minute, if you have an empty downtown, that's going to enhance your school, your property value. The sales tax that comes into our communities lowers budgets, allows services. And as I say, county exec, don't get me in trouble, but when there's church bazaars and school efforts, it's the local merchants who help, not the mail order companies, not the big box stores. So help the people that help you. One of my other issues, we just started for our 6th year, what we call the Bronxville Giving Garden. We started a garden and we decided not to have it separate with plots for individual families to perhaps grow organic vegetables. We have a garden and we dedicate ourselves to sharing all the cultivated vegetables, which is now up to about 500 pounds a year, to Eastchester Community Action in Tuckahoe and the CSA Soup Kitchen in Mount Vernon, because I think COVID taught us help your neighbors, and hunger doesn't stop at borders. Our county, one of the richest in the country, 1 in 6 of us are food insufficient, and we just need to help each other. And our little garden, I hope, also opens the door. We need to live in a world where neighbors help neighbors. And I know, County Exec, I do my homework, and you have, in your budgets, have added money for food insufficiency. I believe $5 million during COVID, $2 million in the 2021 budget. I could not support that more because, and right now, actually, Channel 12 did a great program on The need to help, the lingering effects of COVID are here and here to stay. Some meat prices have gone up 20%. Channel 12 said fruits and vegetables 17. So if I could send a message, it's our borders in Westchester should be fluid, and we have a duty, and I would argue an honor, to help our friends in need. Thank you, County Exec.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Thank you very much, Madam Mayor. Mayor Mary Marvin of the Village of Bronxville. We appreciate the relationship we have with the village. As you know, each week we invite either the mayor of a village, the mayor of a city, or the supervisor of a town, or their designee if they choose, to join us to talk about whatever issues are important to them. There are 45 separate municipalities in Westchester County, and we invite each of them in some sequence to come and join us. We think it's important for people to understand the diversity of Westchester County from one part of the county to the other, and to understand how each of the different local elected officials sees their responsibilities. We viewed our job as county officials not to be part of a separate corporate entity, which we are as a county government, but rather as a partner, arguably the largest of a group of sibling local governments that include communities as large as the city of Yonkers and as small as the village of Buchanan in terms of population. So we will again have another individual here with us next week and continue throughout the course of the year. I'm joined by Deputy County Executive Ken Jenkins. Let's give you a quick update on the COVID situation. We have a graphic that sort of lays out some of the statistical information for comparison's sake. Our most recent information is as of January 27th, which would be yesterday, and it shows March 27th, that's the current day from yesterday, it shows that we have 1,344 active cases of coronavirus. These are people who have tested positive over the last 10 days for coronavirus, and they have an active case. They haven't yet gone through the 10-day protocol and then rejoined outside of isolation. Now, the grid that you're looking at has three columns: is January 27th, February 27th, and then the column on the right-hand side is March 27th. That is the current information. We wanted to give you some idea of what kind of flow has happened over the last couple of months. So the current numbers down the right side of the column: 1,344 active cases, 31 people hospitalized to COVID currently. We have a total of 2,700 people, that's from the beginning of the pandemic over 2 years, have died due to COVID, 2,700. Two of those individuals, two of those fatalities occurred in the last week, and the most recent infection rate averaged over the last 3 days is 2.7%, meaning of every 100 people that have tested, almost 2.7, have tested positive for COVID, meaning, of course, the remaining 97% plus tested negative for COVID. And we give you a comparison January, February to March. The January 27th date, which is late in January, is on the downside of the Omicron surge. The Omicron surge started in December, late December, peaked in the first 10, 12 days of January, and then started to drop dramatically through the month of January. And yet, it still shows 7,468 active cases. So if you go across the grid, you will see that 2 months ago, we had 7,468 active cases. It dropped down in February to 1,068, now slightly back up to 1,344 cases. Now, if you look at active cases, you might say, well, the disease is on the rise. What else do you look at? Look at the number of people who are hospitalized. That number 2 months ago was 395, down a month ago to 83. That's a dramatic drop. And less people hospitalized today than was a month ago, 31. So that indicator shows a diminution in the severity of the disease as reflected by less people hospitalized, almost 2/3 of a drop from where we were a month ago to where we are today in terms of hospitalizations. Total fatalities, that is, of course, an accumulative number. We go from 2,597 to 2,686 to 2,700. But you can see the math in between. From January to February, we lost 89 people to COVID. From February to March, we lost 14 people to COVID. That is a dramatic drop in the number of fatalities. The next figure down shows fatalities for the prior week that ends on this date, January, February, March 27th. 49 people died in the week that ended January 27th. 10 people died in the week that ended February 27th. 2 people died in the last week that ended March 27th. So we do have an increase in the number of active cases, and as you'll see with the last statistic, infection percentage, we have a slight increase in infections. But we have a dramatic decrease in hospitalizations and a decrease in fatalities, which tells us that while the infection is still with us, and in fact is marginally growing in terms of the amount of people infected, and I will argue that this is a function of our vaccination numbers, which is near 90%. We'll talk about that in just a second. We have a diminution in the severity of the disease, which means that Westchester, more so than any of the surrounding counties, more so than Rockland, Putnam, Dutchess, Orange, Ulster counties, the Bronx, Brooklyn, Staten Island, we have had a high percentage of vaccinations. Our vaccination numbers that the state of New York put out most recently show that Westchester County is 88% with 1 shot, and very close to that. 857,658 Westchester residents have received the first dose. 789,760 have received the second dose. I'd love to share third dose or booster information, but the state does not provide that to us. All of these statistics come through the state of New York. The state of New York is the agency to which all of the entities that administer vaccinations report to. So they're in a position to aggregate it. They put these figures out on their dashboards. They have 2 separate dashboards, one that shows the infection numbers and one that shows the vaccination numbers. So the numbers I've just shared with you, 857,658, everybody has a first dose. Of that total, 789,760 have a second dose. You know, we're working on a population base of 1,004,000 people. But those numbers are higher as a percentage than any of the neighboring counties around us, lower than Suffolk counties, higher than Suffolk counties, higher than the majority of the boroughs of New York City. Manhattan numbers exceed ours, so Manhattan has done a higher percentage of people vaccinated out of the total. The vaccination numbers in the aggregate show that through the county or county-related facilities, 511,468 vaccinations have been administered. The largest amount is the county center, 349,422, almost 350,000 from the county center alone. Our partnership with the Yonkers Armory, 78,900. Our clinics, which are the 2 local clinics we have, 75,000. And all of our pediatric vaccinations, Ken's going to mention a few more of them coming up, working through the medical center, 8,000 vaccinations. So those numbers come from a bunch of different sources. There are people vaccinated at their local pharmacies, people that are vaccinated at their local medical groups, people that are vaccinated at their local hospitals. Those numbers are not part of the bulleted numbers I just gave you, but the overall numbers of vaccinations is very encouraging. Westchester residents, without benefit of any mandates, have responded to the need and the value of vaccinations, and it's reflected both in the number of people vaccinated and the degree of severity, which is a lesser degree of severity, of our COVID-related cases. We do have some satellite locations planned for a couple of other different locations starting this week into next week. Ken Jenkins is going to cover that, as well as covering some of the other information here. Ken?
Thanks, George. And again, to continue that, and remind folks again that the testing site at the county center on April 1st is going to shut down. That will change some of our satellite locations. So this week, the 28th, we're going to have New Rochelle Housing Authority from 3 to 6:30. So again, at the New Rochelle Housing Authority, they're doing first, second, boosters, and anything else to make sure at the New Rochelle Housing Authority to have that at the vaccination satellite location. On the 30th, we're going to have a booster clinic only at the county center. That's from 1 to 4. And then in the afternoon, again, at New Rochelle High School gym, first, second, and booster shots from 3 to 6:30. The 31st, the county center pediatric shots are by appointment, and by appointment only. That's from 3 to 6:30. And then we have the pediatric shots from 2:30 to 6:30 at the county center. And then the county center is going to move on, and the county health department will contact you to see and arrange the appointments in the 3-week period for those pediatric second shots that you need. So again, we want to give a heads up for the following week on the satellite locations. Again, the vaccination satellite for pediatrics at the Hutchinson Elementary School in Pelham. And again, on the 5th, Hope Community Services in New Rochelle. And then we'll be able, again, to move forward with those vaccination satellite locations. Again, we want to make sure that everyone realizes, County Executive pointed out so well, that we almost had 60% out of county-related facilities, around 60% of the vaccinations that happened in the county, and certainly mentioning that it was the new base of 1 million people. Congratulations, Westchester County, for doing that. So some people may have heard us say little larger numbers, but again, moving, because the census numbers came in October, moving those numbers so that we have a base that now is supported around the state of New York. So again, the vaccination satellite locations, walk-ins are available. If you have a pediatric vaccination that you're going for, make sure that you have a parent or a guardian along with you, because that is the only way that you'll be able to get those pediatric shots. So that means if you're under 18 years old, you need to have a parent or guardian with you that's able to sign off on the forms. Thank you so much, George.
Thanks very much, Ken Jenkins, our Deputy County Executive. Just to summarize the COVID-related issues, we know that we've been through this now for well over 2 years, and it is a frustrating situation to deal with it. We are trying, as we read the existing moment, COVID has gone into some degree of reduction in its widespread nature. We read what you read, that there are other possible variants out there. We don't know which of them may take hold. We don't know if they will or won't take hold. So we are working on the basis of the numbers that we have today, and the policy will drive around those numbers. We are still in a pandemic structure, and we're still making sure that vaccinations and testing are made available. We're still making test kits available to local organizations, and we're still prepared to do vaccinations along the lines that Ken has just highlighted with any entity. When we talk to our municipal officials on our twice-monthly calls, and when we have talked to our school officials on a regular basis, the county is prepared to put healthcare department people out there to provide additional sources of vaccination, as long as we can get enough of a concentration of individuals that can be able to do that. I would point out that we are planning to have as much of a normal year as we can this year. Our golf courses are now open. They stayed open throughout the pandemic. We are planning to do some of the things that we did not do in the last couple of years, such as the ethnic festivals that occur primarily at Kensico Dam Plaza and to some extent at Ridge Road Park. We are looking forward to a full complement of those beginning in the spring into the summer and into the very early part of the fall. If conditions change, if we see that some other variant becomes present and has a significant presence in the marketplace, then we'll reserve the right to take whatever action is necessary. But I think we've been very deliberate in the things we've done to this point. We've been able to avoid having outbreaks that people were concerned about. There were folks 2 years ago that thought our extension of Bicycle Sunday might create an outbreak. It did not. Some people thought that we needed to have restrictions on our restaurants, that would prevent an outbreak. We did not do that, and we did not have an outbreak that was tied to restaurants. We did not require vaccinations by law nor fire people who work for the county government, but using our persuasive powers, we had more of our workforce vaccinated and more of them ability to resist getting the disease and resist spreading the disease. We had no outbreak from that. So we think that our measured policies have worked. They have helped us get through to this point. But we're not in any way, shape, or form cocky about this. Around the next corner could be an announcement or an impact that we haven't planned on, and we will just react to it based on whatever the realities are. We watch what the CDC does. We follow what the New York State Department of Health does. At this point in time, the numbers are good. We hope they'll continue to stay good, but we'll continue to do our diligent job. The last topic that I want to cover today is consistent with what we've been doing over the last number of weeks, which is to talk about a major project in the county. Last week, you may remember, we talked in some detail about the projects at Playland for reconstruction of Playland. If you go down to Playland, you'll see a lot of capital work going on, and we kind of covered some of those different issues. If you're of a mind to see the report, you can go back on Facebook to what we reported a week ago. Look at the end of the report, and we chatted about that. There's always some chatter on Facebook that follows that. This week, I want to talk about the Lake Isle Dam issue and project and sort of take you through a little bit of the backstory so that you have an idea of it. There was a meeting this week with Eastchester residents, and I participated in it. Ken was there. Our senior leaders were there, along with State Assemblywoman Amy Paulin, State Senator Shelley Mayer, and we were there at the invitation of the town supervisor, Tony Calavito. Members of the town board were there, in which each of us talked about the different elements of the Lake Isle Dam project where we were at it. Most of the residents that came were residents of Lake Isle area, and they had really a singular issue that they wanted to talk about, which is to not lower the water in the lake for whatever purpose, either to inspect the dam and update the report, or to lower the water to do the work that was necessary in the dam. That was the public input that came from the public almost unanimously from every source. I just want to take you back a little bit. Over the last, we'll roughly say in about 5 years, the State Department of Environmental Conservation, which has a responsibility to inspect dams all across New York State, small dams, large dams. A lot of this is rural, but it also involves suburban settings, even in New York City where they may exist. And they made a determination that the Lake Isle Dam, which holds back Lake Isle, which is a man-made lake that is on the border of Eastchester and New Rochelle. There are houses that ring around it. Lake Isle, the lake itself, exists directly to the west of the Hutchison River Parkway. If you're driving down the Hutchison River Parkway from the north to the south, you pass the Wilmot Road exit. Before you get to the Mill Road North Avenue exit, to your right is where the lake is. If you stare at the lake, you won't be driving on the road, so try to be careful about it. If you're in the city of New Rochelle and you go up Wilmot Road, there's a way to enter into the Lake Isle neighborhood to the left, right near Iona Prep. If you're in the Eastchester side of it, there's an access at California Road, which diagonally connects Route 22 to Mill Road. And so Lake Isle is a significant sized lake, and it has a great presence. It sits above, raised over the roadway of the Hutchison River Parkway, which traverses to the south beneath the lake. And the dam itself holds back the water of the lake from what would ultimately be draining down through the Hutchison River Valley to that area south of where the lake currently is. The state determined that there were deficiencies in the dam. They did a report, and they directed that improvement work be done on it, and they went to court. And they sued initially the town of Eastchester, the city of New Rochelle, and the private homeowners around the dam to require actions to be taken to fix the dam along the lines that were structured. The city of New Rochelle took some leadership in being responsible for an engineering report by the organization McDonald, which was completed in 2020. The city of New Rochelle financed 50% of that, and the county financed 50% of that report. And that report identified a project to fix the dam that ranged somewhere in the $8 to $10 million range of improvements. There was some vagueness in the amount because of underwater work that had to be done that couldn't be truly seen until people were up close and personal with that portion of the mechanicals that were on the water side of the dam. Then in 2020, when that happened, the state and through the court added the county of Westchester and the village town of Scarsdale to the lawsuit, and we became parties to the lawsuit as it occurred in 2021. So now the county is dragged into it as part of that process. We looked at the issue. It was reported about in the newspaper and reported in a number of different areas, and no action was moving to take place on the reconstruction of the dam. So we decided as a county administration to take leadership in making sure that the dam was repaired, and we did a couple of different things. The nexus for our involvement as a county government, we do not, as a county government, own the dam. We don't own a piece of the dam. However, directly south of the dam, we have two county parks, Twin Lakes Park, which is on the western side of the Hutchison River Parkway, and on the east side of the parkway, Nature's Study Woods, which is accessed through the city of New Rochelle. And in addition, were the dam to be breached, and it's not an imminent danger to be breached, but were the dam to be unrepaired over some extended period of time, if there was to be a breach of the dam in any sort, the floodwaters would affect not just Eastchester and New Rochelle, and it would affect those two communities. It would downriver affect the village of Pelham and the city of Mount Vernon as well. And there would be loss of property, conceivably, depending on when such a tragedy might occur, perhaps the loss of life. It would make the Hutchison River Parkway inoperable, and that's a major route of traffic. We don't own the Hutchison River Parkway, but it's an important route for travel and commerce. And none of those outcomes, the loss of property or lives amongst four communities or the loss of a major roadway, is acceptable to the county. So we asked some members of our team, Joan McDonald, no relation to MacDonald, who does the study, Joan McDonald, our Director of Operations to reach out to the state DEC. She herself was a former state commissioner of Department of Transportation, and John Nona, who is our county attorney, to reach out respectively to the state DEC on one hand and to the court on the other hand to indicate that the county was prepared to take a role of leadership in ensuring that the dam would be repaired. We were very clear that the repair of the dam was important to us. We did not want to have a role to play post-repair in the ongoing maintenance or management of the dam. That would fall to the other players in the game. But that repair would be important because it would satisfy the basis for the lawsuit. And since we are a party to the lawsuit, we have a public interest in the end product and also a public responsibility to try to divest ourselves of any obligation under the lawsuit. With that thought in mind, we reached out to the other different players in the game. State DEC responded positively. They indicated that it was their feeling that an updated engineering analysis would need to be made, that the original Mott-McDonald report needed to be updated and frankly, repriced to make sure that the amount of money for the repair of the dam would be accurately identified. If it's an $8 to $10 million range 2 years ago, that number could be significantly higher now. And we have estimated that to do that updated report by Mott-McDonald would probably be an additional $1 million. Westchester County administration made the commitment to pay for the update of that report. We paid for 50% of the original report, and now we were prepared to pay 100% of the report. And on the assumption that that proposal would go through the Board of Legislators, and I have a general majority of legislators that appear to be willing to follow that direction, that we'd get an updated report that would enable us to know how much it will cost for the repair of the dam. The funding of the repair of the dam would come from three sources: the county, the state, and the federal government. And in those three particular locations, the state has made a commitment through both Assemblywoman Paulin and State Senator Shelley Mayer to fund $4 million, slightly more than $4 million of the cost, whatever that cost may be. And we do not know what the federal contribution may be. We know that there's federal infrastructure money available. There is money available that has to be accessed through the state, but the state will have federal money that can then be allocated for this purpose, federal money allocated through the state to go to this process. The county administration has made the commitment that we would fund the difference on the assumption that we know what the contribution of the federal government is. The federal government has more resources than the state, and the state has more resources than the county. But if the federal amount of contribution along with the state $4 million is not sufficient, we would make up the difference, and then we know we'd have the money and we could get the dam fixed. That mindset, and obviously it does require us to present a plan ultimately to the Board of Legislators, was received very positively by both the state DEC, which indicated that they would refrain from any enforcement of their order and any element in the lawsuit that would fine the various parties to the lawsuit, because usually that's what happens. The state will come in and they'll sue you, and if they win in court, they fine you for every day or month that you don't take action to solve the problem they want. In this case, we've said you don't need to fine us or any of the other players in the game. We are now putting together a consortium to do that which you want us to do. And the people in the court case, the judge, and of course the state as the prosecutor of the court case, if you will, were prepared to see us try to put this plan together. We received positive response from our state legislators. As I said, they secured money, and they also indicated that the long-term picture for the dam could be addressed by the creation of a special district. It is not unprecedented around the state. It would be a matter of state law. This is what both Assemblywoman Paulin and Senator Mayer and their colleagues would be work to put together, and that entity would be created sufficiently in time to take on the responsibility of the dam once it has been reconstructed. And with all of that, we now have a direction to move forward on the dam. The issue raised by the residents of the lowering of the lake is a very serious issue for the people who live around the lake. They really don't want to see the lake lowered. They're concerned about whether or not the lake would be properly refilled in a reasonable amount of time. They know that if the lake is lowered to some level, what they're going to see is not going to be very pleasant in their backyard. They enjoy the lake for recreation. They enjoy the lake for its aesthetic beauty. But the most important thing is that the dam be fixed. So I made the argument at that public meeting, and we backed that up with our policy, that we believe that the update of the McDonald report, the $1 million or so that the county is going to be prepared, that we believe we're going to urge the state DEC to allow that report to be done and to be updated without having to lower the lake to do the full assessment. We believe it can be done. There is another engineering company that asserts it can be done without lowering the lake, and we're going to push for that to be accepted by the DEC. If they do that, then we will submit to the Board of Legislators legislation to put money aside to pay for the McDonald report. And then once that updated report is done, I don't know how long that study is going to take. Is it 4 months? Is it 6 months? I'm not familiar with the time frame. But we would then be able to report back to the DEC, this is where we are in terms of what has to be done at the lake, updated. And at that same time, we will be lobbying both the state legislators, us as a county, the local governments involved will be lobbying our federal legislators to come in with the money so we know what the price package is that would be necessary to complete this task. There is some question that has been raised by whether or not this falls into discretionary funding on behalf of the county. We view this as money that has to be spent to deal both with a major public safety problem that exists, a dam that's deficient, that could, in theory, cause a significant public safety and health problem, as well as satisfying a lawsuit that we are a party to. And so with that thought in mind, we don't view this as a discretionary benefit for any of the two municipalities that are involved in this. They, too, will have to spend time and energy and money, just in different ways. We intend to do a certain amount of capital up front. They will have other financial responsibilities to deal with this. But this is not a conveyance of resources from the county to either of the two municipalities. This is the county contributing to fixing a major public asset. And we would be doing that alongside the state of the federal government. This is not a unilateral action of the county government. We would be a partner to help make this happen. To the extent that we will see whether the state DEC agrees to allow us to move forward on the study without having to lower the lake, that portion of the issue can be dealt with immediately. And if the state DEC does determine, yes, in fact, we can do that, then the county will move forward on the update of the study. And hopefully that will be done in an approximate enough time frame so that we can secure the state funding and so that our state legislative colleagues can come up with the mechanism to own and or manage the dam going forward. One of the problems that we have is this dam was constructed at a point in time so long ago that the actual ownership of the dam is in question. Who did the work, what kind of an organization was part of it is no longer easily accessible to us. So I think that we see that this is something of importance. We certainly don't want the dam to breach. We certainly don't want the damage that would come after that. We, the county government, are prepared to take a role of leadership, and we stepped forward first, but we've had other partners around us to do those things, and we think that is a workable plan going forward. When we allocate capital money for any set of projects, we improve a sewer treatment plant, we fix playland, we open pools, and we fix roads and so forth. That is identified as part of our county budget. This year, the capital projects that we pay for this year has a debt service allocation, and that debt service allocation fits into the construct of our budget. That budget, when we adopted it, has a certain amount of money in reserve, and it also has a certain amount of reduction in the amount of property tax levy. So when somebody hears, oh, you're spending $1 million to do something, $2 million, is that coming out of my pocket? It's worked into a budget, and that budget for this year has already been assessed as being less expensive to you with a tax cut as would be otherwise. We don't want to jump ahead of ourselves and project what we think will happen for the 23 budget. That's a discussion to be had in the fall when it's constructed, or what happens in the 24 budget. My term of office continues for the next 3+ years, so I will have responsibility, God willing, for the budgets of 23, 24, and 25, and so I will have to back up the assertions that we make now. We'll go before the Board of Legislators. They'll have scrutiny. But at the end of the day, the principle behind the Lake Isle Dam is the same principle that we have had in a host of other different issues, and that is we view the county government as protecting the assets and the public safety of our residents. We do not look at government as something that has to philosophically be shrunken per se. We think the government has certain responsibilities, and we have to fulfill those responsibilities. There are certain assets, and we want to do them responsibly. We hear voices on either side of us that tell us do this, do that, and we listen, and we try to be responsive to it in an open way. But when we pick a path of action, we pick a path of action that we think balances those things off. And there are times you might argue that we're moving in this side of the diamond, sometimes on the other side. But in each side, we try to make it part of our logical situation. This is a democracy. You will hear other voices with other points of view. And, you know, I certainly don't suppress dialogue. I disagree where I think disagreement is warranted. When people disagree and express their reasons for it, I accept that at face value. I expect to be treated in the same fashion. When we get into the area of suggesting motives and so forth, if I think our administration or I've been unfairly identified as such, I respond back in kind. I respond mildly if it's a mild. I respond with vigor and force if it's been directed to me with vigor and force. I've been given the authority by you for second 4 years. Those will be the final 4 years. I intend to do the best job I can, and it's in my judgment and our judgment as an administration that fixing this dam is in the best interest of Westchester County. Failure to fix this dam, breaching of this dam at some point in time were that to happen would be catastrophic. And then we'd have plenty of time to speculate why things weren't done that we're laying out right now to be done. And I want to publicly thank Assemblywoman Amy Paulin, State Senator Shelley Mayer, both Mayor Noam Bramson, who was at the meeting, as well as Supervisor Anthony Colavito. On this particular issue, the fixing of the dam, we are working in harmony. And I think at the end of the day, that's what residents of Westchester want. They want us to work in harmony and solve problems, and that's what we intend to do. So that is the end of our report. We have some questions. Catherine Chaffee will give us some remote questions, and then we have some in-studio questions, which we're happy to answer as well.
Sure.
Catherine Chaffee.
So the first two questions are from David Proper from the Journal News. He's asking, how much longer will testing continue at the county center, and how does that affect any repairs that could take place there? Well,
everything is going to shut down as of Friday. So there won't be any testing or vaccinations at the center as of Friday. The dialogue that we have with the state Office of General Services is ongoing. Joan McDonald, Director of Operations, Emily Saltzman, our Deputy Director of Operations, are working with the state to see what kind of a timeline can be put together. You may remember that the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers and the state were involved in the conversion of the county center from its traditional usage to this healthcare usage. And that took a certain amount of time to do, and I think reestablishing it as an arena for general purposes will take at least that long, if not longer. We have floors that have been used for basketball that have been used now for people to trump on and walk around, and devices have been created on it. So we've got a lot of work ahead of us. So David, I would say it's going to be a minimum of a few months, and it might be longer than that. It just depends on what we find as we get into it. But the work would start as soon as the state and the county come to some timeline understanding. We'll certainly announce that at the time. And, we don't expect to see any activity in there, certainly for the second or third quarters of the year. If it's ready for the fourth quarter of this year, that would be a nice holiday gift. But I don't want to be sure that that's the case. It depends on what they find in the reconstruction of the center.
Okay, and the second question, which is also the last question from David Proper, he asks, with the fourth vaccine dose possibly being approved in the near future, do you think it's too soon to stop vaccines at the county center?
No, I don't think so, because right now we have reached almost the point of exhaustion for third shots, meaning the booster shots. It is not yet commonly thought that the fourth shots will be universally needed. I personally tend to think that we're probably going to be dealing with annual COVID shots. Certainly people of a certain age, and I'm in that age category, will probably want to have an annual COVID shot like you might have an annual flu shot. So I think to some extent, David, there's going to be a need for there to be robust vaccinations. We think at this stage of the game that we'll be able to handle that demand using the existing areas for vaccinations other than a singular mass vaccination site. We saw a great demand for testing around the holiday season, but that testing diminished pretty dramatically once the holiday season was over. In fact, we're at a point now where we have a tremendous backlog of available test kits and almost no demand proportionate to what we have, when 90 days ago we had a huge demand for test kits and insufficient supplies. So I think right now it's wise for us to reconfigure the county center, move it to the purposes that we've talked about, and then move from there forward. If, however, things change, then we will adjust to that change. My hope is that we won't see what we saw that has started the original circumstances. Because do remember, when vaccinations first came on the scene, they were dealing with a tremendous pent-up demand of a year's worth of COVID issues. And so that large influx of people wanting to be vaccinated all at one time was really what made the county center a necessary site. And we did the same thing at Glen Island with the drive-through purposes, for testing purposes. I was testing, the others vaccination. We have not had a similar need to have drive-through testing occur because there isn't the same backup demand. So I think it'll work out that way.